Hi, Nick Granville here. I thought I'd do a lesson this time on chords and chord voicing and a few substitutions that I like to use all the time. I'm a firm believer in making things practical, so I like to do things that I actually use and not just a bunch of random chords. So in order to do this lesson, you need to check out my last lesson, which was the intermediate lesson on chord voicing, which is basically drop two chords, and you need to know those before this is going to make any sense. So if you haven't seen that, check out that video. There'll be a link below. Okay, so with no further ado, I'm going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at ways that we can extend voicings based on things we already know. So if we take a voicing like C major 7, right? It's a very simple voicing, a drop 2 voicing. So we have the notes C, G, B, and E. It makes up this chord here. Now if we take that chord voicing, there's a lot of notes that are unnecessary in there. The first one that I say is unnecessary is the fifth. Fifths to me sound, it's like a power chord, and I don't really want that in a jazz kind of voicing. Not saying that you only have to use these chords for jazz, but you can use them for anything you like, but primarily they're kind of jazz voicings. So if we take that fifth, let's move it to something else. Let's move it to, say, the sharp 11th, or the sharpened 4th, in other words. And now we have, which is a lot more colourful than this. Now we could do the same thing with all our inversions as we did in our last lesson. So if we have this voicing here, we remove the fifth and make it a sharp 11th. Now have E, B, C, and F sharp. Could do the same with the next voicing. The fifth would be G. Let's make it F sharp. So we have a much more colourful voicing. We can do that with all of the voicings everywhere. Say, for example, this voicing, which is G, C, E, and B. Take the fifth, let's make it the sharp 11th. Now we have 12 voicings for C major 7 sharp 11, whereas we only had 12 voicings for C major 7 based on the last lesson. So you can see that's going to give you a whole lot of new voicings that you can play just by doing that much. Now if we take that same idea, we can also replace the fifth with the sixth, and we end up with, which is C, A, B, and E. Now I should mention that some of these chords are just going to be impractical to play. They're going to be big stretches and horrible to reach, but that's just the guitar for you. So in which cases I've decided that any voicings that are hard to play, too hard to play, I just play something else. Unless I absolutely have to play that chord, then I'll find a way around it. So if we take our inversions, we have place the fifth with the sixth. So I can play that chord, but it's very difficult. And the notes we have there are E, B, C, and A. Sounds cool, but for all purposes that's impractical to play, so I forget about that voicing. I don't need it. I'll play something else instead. For example, I could play that voicing here. Now replace the 5 with the 6, so the G goes up to be an A up here, and we have E, B, C, and A. Easier to play than it was to play it up here. Alright, same with up here. We take this chord voicing here, C major 7, it's G, C, E, B. Place the G with an A. There's our root note. And we can end up with 12 voicings of what is essentially like a C major 13 type chord, because the 6 and the 13 are the same note. Okay, so let's take that same idea, and this time we're going to extend it even further still. Instead of having the root note, let's replace the root note, because you don't need the root note in a lot of contexts. The bass player has the root note, so we can play a 4-note voicing and play a lot of colour without having to double up on something that's already happening. So for example, if we take this voicing here, C, G, B, E, just stock standard C major 7. Let's replace the 5 with the sharp 11, and we get, as we did before. And now we're going to replace the root note with the 9. If I put that over a C, here that's a really colourful voicing, I can do the same with all the voicings. For example, this chord voicing would become, is our root note. Way more interesting. So the notes I have there are E, B, D, F sharp. I'm only playing 4 notes, but I'm creating a voicing with lots of colour. Right? Now if you check out my video where I played Just Friends, I played a solo version of Just Friends. The opening chord I played right at the beginning of that tune, that version, is this, which is F sharp, D, E, B, which is this voicing here, drop 2, and we have G, C, E, B. I take the G and make it an F sharp, take the root and make it a 9, and I end up with, was what I played, or something along those lines anyway. Anyway, that's the voicing I used. So you can see they're really colourful and really useful. Now of course we can turn these into minors as well. If we take that first voicing, which is D, F sharp, B, E, so C major 7, but now we've added the sharp 11 and we've added the 9, so it's C major 7 sharp 11 is the full voicing. If we want to turn that into a minor, you do the same thing, you flatten the 3rd and flatten the 7. Now we end up with, problem there is you don't want a sharp 11 on a minor chord, you want a natural 11. So you would go, alright, and you could do the same with all the voicings. We had this, came, to become a minor would be, and my approach to this is that I just take the voicings that I like and I use those and I integrate them into my playing. No point knowing all these voicings and being able to play them if you can't use them in real music. So what I do is I integrate them into tunes that I know straight away, like I showed with that Just Friends voicing. A couple of substitutions that I use, and I use these all the time. If we look at 2-5-1, it would be D minor 7 would be the 2 chord. Chord would be G7, going to C major 7. If we look at D minor 7, if we look at what D minor 9 is, D minor 9 is D, F, A, C, and E. Those are the notes. D, F, A, C, E. Now often guitarists would play that voicing like this. It's a common voicing. A better way to do that, if we look at those notes again, D, F, A, C, E, if we take those notes and we remove the root note, we're left with F, A, C, E, or F major 7 in other words. So F major 7 with a D bass note gives you D minor 9. So a substitution I use all the time, it's not really a substitution, but it is a substitution. I use F major 7, and that gives me D minor 9. So the advantage is now that I don't have a root note. I'm playing a D minor 9 and I'm leaving the root note up to the bass player. The other advantage is that by thinking that way, F major 7 over D, very easy, I just think root note is D, I go up to the minor 3rd and I play the opposite type of chords. It's a minor, I'm playing a major. Right? So what I do is I play F major 7, now I have all my inversions of F major 7 that I can use. For example, that's A, E, F, C. Now that chord there, that's an interesting one because that's E, A, C, F. It doesn't work as a major chord, it just sounds horrid. It just doesn't sound good. But as a minor 9 with an F major 7 over a D, it works really nicely. Because the perspective has changed. So I use that a lot. Now if I'm going to turn that into a 2-5-1, F major 7 over D, I'll get to the G7 voicing in a minute, and then I'm going to go to C. Again, I take the same principle, I go up to the 3rd, and I build the opposite type of chord. So for major 7 I want a minor, so that's going to be E minor 7. If we look at the notes, C major 9 is C, E, G, B, D, remove the root note, we have E, G, B, D, or E minor 7 in other words. So now we have 2, kind of G7, and then to me it makes a lot of sense to play a chord for the G7 that would smoothly go between those two chords, and one I like to use there is like a G13. And the notes I have there are F, B, E, and G. It has the root note on the top, which is quite interesting. Now what we have is this: 2, 5, 1. So D minor 7, G13 to C major 7. And I use that all the time. Now, of course, you can turn those into minor 2-5-1s as well. The way we do that is we flatten the 3rd and flatten the 7 and so on and so on. So I could go D minor 7 flat 5 to G13 to the C minor 9 I just played, went up to the minor 3rd and built the opposite, which is the major 7. So what I did that time is instead of playing the G13, the root note on the top, I replaced the root note with a flat 9. Which is a really nice 2-5-1. Now you could extend these to all the other inversions of these chords and it gives you a whole lot of really pretty chords. Okay, and there's one more substitution I'll go over very quickly that I use a lot. All those chords were built off the 3rd, either off the major 3rd or off the minor 3rd. The other one that you can build off quite commonly is to build off the 5th. So if we go to say A minor, because that's a relative key to C major, if I go up to the 5th and I build an E minor 7 over the top of that, I get an A minor 11. Now it's not really a minor 11 because it doesn't have the 3rd in it. It's got the 5th of A, the 9, the 11, and the flattened 7th. So it's like a minor 11 but with no minor 3rd, but it's quite tasty and it's a bit more open sounding without that 3rd. Now if you're playing with a piano player, they'll probably play a 3rd. If you're playing with a soloist, there's a good chance they're probably going to play the 3rd at some point. So everybody's already hearing that you don't necessarily always have to state it. So I quite like that chord when I feel like I don't have to state it. Now of course I can use any inversion. It could be E minor 7 inversion. So I have G, D, E, B over A. And of course, and one last thing I should talk about. Now I'm talking about these substitutions in terms of chord voicing. When I play, I don't actually see chord voicing and soloing as being two different things. I don't necessarily do either exclusively. Both kind of coexist. When I solo, I want to play chords sometimes. I want to play notes that maybe are 2-note chords like dyads and that kind of stuff when I solo. So when I solo, I'm taking the same approach as well. So if I see a D minor 7, I'll often play F major 7 arpeggios over it. And there's our root. Creating that substitution that I did before. So I'll use that as a sound. I mean, I won't play it as obvious as I just did then. I'll sort of bury it into a sound, but often we'll play that. So there on the C major 7, I played E minor. So I played E minor 7 over top of C, creating C major 9, in other words, this sound. Thanks very much for watching. Check out some of my other lessons. I've done a bunch on them. If you have any ideas or questions, fire away. I'm happy to try and answer them if I can. And remember to subscribe to my channel. Thanks very much. Cheers.